everyone. My name is Jen Scheidler, and I'm the Strategic Planning and Operations Manager at the World Trade Center Institute. And on behalf of WTCI, I would like to welcome you to our fourth and final session of the AGILE 2021 Innovation Series, Innovations in Protecting the World's Water Supply. Before we begin our program, I would like to take this moment to recognize several companies who make the AGILE series possible. Our visionary sponsor, Todd Rupert International, our platinum sponsors, RSM and JP Morgan Chase, as well as our gold sponsors, Japaigo, Ports America Chesapeake, Stanley Black & Decker, Hogan Lovells, and Tesco Technologies. Thank you so much for your continued support. And for those of you joining us today who are new to WTCI, our organization aims to empower our members with new ideas and valuable connections. Programs like AGILE kick off meaningful conversations that explore innovative ideas. We hope to inspire conversations between our members and guests through all our programs, covering a wide variety of topics that are developed with and for international business professionals. The best way to connect with Maryland's largest international business network is through WTCI membership. We help our members share their knowledge and expertise and offer them a wide range of global business services and connections. To learn how you might benefit from membership with the World Trade Center Institute, please contact our Senior Manager of Business Development, Lydia Yodi, at lydia@wtci.org. So we have a great session for you today with top experts who will discuss the importance of understanding your company's risk profile of water and the progress being made in the private sector, as well as strong public-private partnerships and collaborations. Today, you'll hear from Andrea Erickson-Quiroz, who's the Managing Director of Water Security at the Nature Conservancy, Naabia Ofosu-Amaah, who is the Senior Corporate Engagement Advisor of Global Water at the Nature Conservancy, as well as Shannon Quinn, who's the Global Water Stewardship Leader at Procter & Gamble, and Jonathan Radke, who's the Water Resource Sustainability Director at Coca-Cola. The session will be moderated by Bruce McIndoe, who's the founder of McIndoe Risk Advisory and WTCI board member. Bruce is a recognized leader, author, and speaker in the areas of global risk management, technology, and intelligence. Formerly, he was a founder of WorldAware, which was recently acquired by GardaWorld, a leading provider of global intelligence. He has been the industry driver of creating and putting into practice the concept of integrated risk management to protect people, sites, supply chain, and information assets for global organizations. Prior to WorldAware, Bruce worked at the NSA, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and NASA. And throughout his career, water security and associated risks have continued to increase. He is passionate and knowledgeable about water, the risks of water scarcity, and the urgency required to solve this global issue. At the end of the presentations today, he will lead the panel discussion and take live questions from the audience. So please welcome Bruce McIndoe, who will provide an overview of the session and the topic.
Thanks, Jen, and look forward to a great session here, the last one of the four-part series. We're going to start out just a quick introduction in talking about water. And it's always hard to believe with a planet that's covered with 2/3 water that we have to be concerned. But the challenges on water is that most of it's salty. And if it's not salty, it's hidden away in ice or elsewhere. So, the amount of water available to animals and humans is quite small. And what's the challenge that we're going to talk quite a bit about today is managing and trying to work our way through what is becoming a scarce resource on the planet. You can see kind of the projections in the next 20 years on water scarcity, and even the United States, especially in the West and Southwest, is under extreme drought now. And we had Cape Town in the news a couple years ago, where they were getting to day zero and actually running completely out of water. And these are the top 10 countries that are at risk for achieving that dubious honor. So when we look at water and kind of how we're consuming it and why these withdrawals are exceeding the holding capacity, the number one consumer is agriculture, and most of the agricultural practices around the world largely are what they have been since the dawn of time. And so really focusing on how we're using water and how we're conserving water in these areas, especially in agriculture, is what will make a big difference. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And of course, then without water, people perish. And so it is a existential threat for human life on the planet, and why it's such an incredibly important issue. And it's also a geopolitical issue and a food security issue, and all the things that are linked to water that drive behavior and drive demand and conflict. And it's an area that every individual on the planet needs to become well versed in and ask themselves, kind of what is their water footprint, what is their consumption, what are they doing to conserve water even in their own personal life. So we had the 3 prior sessions I just wanted to put in here for people that didn't have a chance yet to potentially listen to those, to give you a sense of what we had prior. So we started out kind of at the human scale of water, and kind of these 3 segments in part 1. Then we talked about management and conservation at the kind of building or small campus level to kind of urban city level to global level on conservation. And the third part of the series, we brought in and spent a lot of time talking about partnerships and the long-term impact, and how we can look at some of these large watersheds and look at managing consumption and recycling of water. And then, of course, today we have 3 great segments in really talking about what companies are doing and what organizations are doing to collaborate with the private sector, and looking forward to that. So with that, I'm going to introduce the first group, which is Naabia and Andrea from the Nature Conservancy. And Naabia is the Senior Corporate Engagement Advisor there. And she's the Global Water, Advisor for Global Water. She focuses on developing and implementing the strategy for engaging companies to further TNC's global water goals. In this role, she recommends industries and companies as candidates to support TNC's programs and develops tools and resources to empower TNC staff engagement with these partner organizations. Andrea is the Managing Director for Water Security at the TNC. Andrea leads the team of freshwater scientists, policy experts, economists, and on-the-ground conservation practitioners that identify, test, and deploy innovative strategies that demonstrate how investments that are made in nature enable us to secure the water that we need to prosper. She's also the co-author of Beyond the Source, TNC's flagship report on nature-based solutions for water security. I'm going to let you 2 ladies take it away.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks very much for the kind introduction and setting the stage for us, and also to WTCI for the invitation to be here. We're glad to be part of this panel with some corporate partners who are real leaders in this field. So I'm looking forward to an engaging conversation with all of you all later on. I'll set the stage briefly and then pass it over to my colleague, Naabia, who is indeed our specialist in working with corporate engagement partners and developing those partnerships together. So while Naabia is bringing up the slide deck for us right now, one of the things to think about when we talk about water is just to realize, water is not a resource like any other resource on the planet. And Bruce did a great job of presenting that broadly. It changes over time, and what's happening with water scarcity is changing over time. I've been asked before, the question is, water the new oil? Is it like that where we'll struggle with this resource over time? And I think my answer is no. This is much worse. Water is not replaceable. With oil, you can think of other energy sources. You can't move it. It's too heavy to move around from place to place. We can't ship it from one place to another unless it's embedded in products that have already been produced and shipped. And I think what we'll find is that it shows up where it wants to and not where we want it to. And so we'll see increasing scarcity and increasing floods. And those things are really going to be pretty much out of our control from here going forward. So thinking about water is thinking about change and managing into the future with change. Next slide, Naabia. There are some things that we know about that change, though, and this is an example of the Aral Sea in a part of near Russia, the Tajikistan, in that area up there. And this is how this body of water was pumped dry for agriculture. And so much of the change that's happening on the landscape, as Bruce alluded to, is coming from human activities and largely from agriculture. And we really have shifted entire systems. So this is no longer a lake. The people that lived there and lived off of fisheries are no longer able to make a living. And eventually the agriculture itself that it was meant to support will not be sustained because we're overusing those resources. So in a world of overuse, we also have climate. So next slide, Naabia. As we think about what's happening with our climate and the changing patterns on the planet in every corner that we can possibly find, the face of climate change is water. You'll find increasing floods and the impacts to our communities and to businesses, like this case in Thailand, where motor company lost, a lot of cars in one flood incident. But we see those numbers all the time of what happens in Texas and Louisiana or other places around the United States in floods. Drought and impact on what's happening with water supply, like Cape Town that Bruce alluded to, or in agricultural supply chains, is growing. And also extreme weather events, whether that's the fire events that we see in California, and hopefully we'll not see as grave a year as we did in 2019. But given the drought and conditions, we might fully expect continued losses that then therefore impact water. As we see fire in the Western United States, we also see impact to water systems all across the West. So that's our landscape of human use plus climate change. Now, the Nature Conservancy is really concerned about this issue because, of course, water is life. Water supports all of our efforts, but also all of biodiversity. And so we're quite concerned about the decline in freshwater biodiversity in particular. And this forces us to seek common ground, that we need to work together to find solutions for both nature and for people as we go forward. Next slide. So here's where we're leaning on and on some great partnerships we already have in the corporate space, including the CEO Water Mandate and the Water Resilience Coalition. If you haven't looked into that, I invite you to look at their website. But they've really compiled some important statistics here, pulled from many different sources about what's at stake, both the good and the bad of this. On the economic side, this is these economies in which businesses are operating, and we see some very important signals into the future. And the one that I find to be really alarming is the World Bank's work thinking about the decline of GDP growth in places across the world, which could be up to 6%. Now that 6% is not going to be equally distributed. There are some places that will see a negative spiral of loss of economic viability and loss of any ability for markets to grow there because of water and the mismanagement of water going forward. So that could be a very severe geopolitical situation. If you think about Syria, people in a drought situation that no longer have jobs or farms to work from, then find themselves in civil unrest, and suddenly we have 5 million people in Europe. So those are geopolitical issues. But the businesses themselves have specific risks identified, but opportunities as well. And so if not thinking about their risk, how might they actually manage to survive into the future? But even more importantly, could they think about opportunity and how to think ahead of this curve? And all of this is also within context of customers, stakeholders, communities where we all live and operate. While there's only, maybe 155 million that are in those top 10 critical cities that Bruce mentioned, there are 2 billion people already today that are living in water stressed environment, and those numbers will grow over time. And that will undercut all of our ability to live peacefully on the planet. Next slide. My last slide, and then I'm going to give it to Naabia, is just to really point at the opportunity, why we feel so strongly about working with corporations is an important part of our work in addressing freshwater conservation, is that the opportunity is that only 150 companies touch about a third of the global withdrawals. So if we can find good partnership and fast friends and work together with those companies, imagine the impact that we can have globally, whether in your operations or in your supply chain. Corporations have a very powerful signal that they can send out in their actions and policies and their investments around the globe. And so with that as an optimal or optimistic note, let Naabia show you a little bit more about our work with corporations. Naabia?
Great. Thanks so much, Andrea. And thank you to the World Trade Center Institute for having us here today. I'm going to share a little bit about the Nature Conservancy, or TNC, which is a global environmental conservation organization with a mission to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. We have a staff of about 4,000, including 400 professional and PhD level scientists, and we work in 72 countries and territories around the world, including all 50 US states. We have 1 million dedicated members and a far-reaching alumni and volunteer network. And we focus on 3 overall priorities of tackling climate change, protecting lands and waters, and providing food and water sustainably. Looking at the sustainable provision of water, we work with a range of stakeholders on water security activities, which is where our interests tend to overlap. As an environmental conservation organization, the Nature Conservancy focuses on ensuring the integrity of freshwater ecosystems, which is the foundation of water security for people and nature. Corporations have an interest in water because they require a consistent supply of good quality water for their entire value chains, and they're also looking to manage their physical, regulatory, reputational, and financial water risks. As Andrea mentioned, those risks that are coming through for companies for so many different reasons. There are a number of activities that we have identified at the intersection of these interests that include land management work, nature-based solutions, water governance, science-based decision-making, and regenerative agriculture as well. And you can see some of the companies who we've worked with on water issues across a range of industries here, including Coca-Cola and P&G, who are joining us today. In terms of what this collaboration looks like on the ground, our focus is on how can you harness nature to ensure water security and environmental and social benefits. We work in areas that are really critical for this work, like lands upstream or groundwater recharge areas. And we're supporting activities such as forest protection and management, replanting of natural vegetation, smart agriculture, and wetland restoration that can lead to more reliable flow of water and cleaner water in areas downstream. We also see that nature-based solutions can have multiple benefits, including climate mitigation and adaptation, conservation of biodiversity, and also human health and well-being benefits in addition. So how are we bringing companies into this process in watersheds? We see that companies have a range of roles that they can play. They can be champions and volunteers. So companies can recruit their peers, they can serve on boards to provide input into how these projects should proceed. They can provide in-kind contributions as well. So they might have hydrologic expertise that they've gained. They might have value chain access. They could provide equipment to these projects. So companies can really come in an in-kind way as well. We're also seeing that companies can engage their consumers to promote conservation awareness through marketing and through advocacy. Companies can make government contacts. They can advocate for specific policies that we're trying to see, using their influence and their networks for the benefit of this work. We're also engaging with companies on corporate practice change. So working with companies on how they can actually incorporate nature into their business operations. How could their business lines look different? How could they think about water in the ways that they're operating as well? And finally, philanthropy, of course. Companies can support TNC's conservation priorities with funds from their companies themselves and also from their corporate foundations. So what does this look like in place? In Phoenix, Arizona, it was a location that was experiencing water scarcity that was caused by drought and growing demand, and poor water quality that was caused by erosion, sedimentation, and those catastrophic wildfires that Andrea mentioned. So TNC worked to put in place a collective action governance mechanism that we called the Verde River Alliance, and this is one of a global strategy that we're promoting for bringing multiple stakeholders together for water. The different agencies, the community members, and the corporations that are listed here, including some competitors that you can see, joined together to invest in forest restoration, smart agriculture activities, upstream, and also to launch some river-friendly living campaigns for the community. These companies engaged by getting their employees out to volunteer in the forest, by sitting on the governance committee to determine which activities and to help advise on the strategic plan for this watershed, and by providing financial support, both to that alliance itself, but then also to the projects that the alliance supports. The company saw a range of benefits, including collective management of risks for their water supply. They also saw some volumetric water benefits for the companies that had water quantity goals, and John will talk a bit about that. And also getting connected to local partners and receiving local recognition for their participation in this issue that was really critical for the community. So to close, I'll share a little bit about how companies can lead and really be best in class in their water programs to get you all thinking about what that could look like. At a site and supply chain level, we're seeing that companies have really been doing well in understanding their water footprints, trying to be as efficient as possible, recycling water on site, meeting their local water quality regulations, and engaging in water stewardship, water governance, and collaboration with others in their watersheds and their supply chains. At the enterprise level, companies can set corporate policies and strategies, and they can disclose these and engage employees to build their capacity on water issues. Companies can also engage their C-suite, so all the way up to the CEO, to make bold philanthropic and brand commitments that are related to water. And then we're also seeing companies engage at a global industry level on setting best-in-class and science-based targets for water and engaging in different water associations and platforms for business, like the Alliance for Water Stewardship, the CEO Water Mandates Water Resilience Coalition that Andrea mentioned as well. So there's a lot that a company can do at different levels to help really move things forward for these water issues that we've talked about. So as Bruce and Andrea raised, addressing these global water issues is a really big challenge, and it will take all of us, including companies, to raise our level of ambition. But we really believe that together we can work to achieve what we want to see and this change that we want to see in the world. So thank you so much for having the Nature Conservancy here today, and we'll pass it back for the next presentation.
Thanks, Andrea, and Naabia, awesome to do. I'm going to introduce our moving from kind of the awesome work TNC's doing around the world, and now start talking to a couple of companies, Procter & Gamble. We have Shannon Quinn, who's been active in the field for over a decade. She's Procter & Gamble's global water stewardship leader. She guides the development of corporate water policies, drives progress against the company's sustainability goals, and cultivates external partnerships that will better prepare P&G and the planet for the future. So Shannon, why don't you give us some insight into Procter & Gamble and how water is intertwined with your success?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Bruce, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's great to talk to all of you. Procter & Gamble has been around for over 200 years. It's always been headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I am today. And we operate in 70 countries and sell our consumer product brands across more than 180 countries, serving 5 billion people every day. In the US, brands like Dawn dishwashing detergent or Cascade, Tide, Head and Shoulders, and Crest are household staples. And besides just being trusted brands found in millions of American homes and beyond, there's another thing most of our brands have in common, and that is water. About 70% of our products need water to be used in people's homes, and all of our and our supplier operations need water to operate. That makes water essential to the continued success and growth of our business. More of our investors and our consumers are also expecting companies, including P&G, to manage water sustainably and recognize and also address issues around water transparently. And for all these reasons, water is a priority for P&G, and it's a key focus of our sustainability efforts. We recently launched a new suite of environmental sustainability goals that we call our Ambition 2030. These goals address key global challenges where P&G is uniquely positioned to enable and inspire positive impact. Water appears across almost every pillar of our goal platform. Our brands are really leading the way by working to enable and inspire responsible consumption in a way that addresses global challenges and also aligns with their brand equity. For some of our leadership brands, that means addressing water use in the home, where their consumers are. And our manufacturing sites are working to increase water efficiency by 35% and develop technologies and partnerships to source 5 billion liters from circular sources by the end of the decade. The company has other associated programs as well, working towards addressing water issues around the world. Those include the Children's Safe Drinking Water Program, which is providing billions of liters of clean water to those in need each year through little packets of chemistry that helps to clean turbid water. And the 50-liter home initiative, which is working to reduce water use in the home without compromising on comfort, really making 50 liters feel like 500 liters. And all of this, all of our programs and goals, they help us make progress against our grand ambition to protect water for people and nature in priority basins. This grand ambition recognizes that water issues are complex and they require solutions unique to each river basin. In 2018, we finished a detailed water risk assessment process, which identified these priority basins. And these are the basins where we will focus our ambition and our efforts on over the next decade. The first step in the assessment process was really to understand where our products use water across their life cycle. 96% of our footprint, our water footprint, occurs during consumer use of our products. 3% in raw materials production and 1% in manufacturing. Once we knew where we were using and impacting fresh water, we worked primarily with the World Resources Institute and their Aqueduct Water Risk Atlas dataset and their tool that they have free to anyone who'd like to use it to assess water risk to our consumer markets, our facility locations, and also across our tier 1 supply chain. This process allowed for the identification of priority manufacturing sites, suppliers, and consumer markets. Once we put all of these results on the map, as you can see here, we could quickly see that we have at least one site and supplier within a priority consumer market facing chronic water stress. Those are the areas highlighted in yellow here. This final result to our water risk assessment pointed to 18 priority basins where we're now focusing our efforts over the next decade. This initial list serves as a starting point for us to learn more about the unique challenges facing each basin and how we can work with others to secure water for people and nature now and into the future. Today, we're exploring the best way to track and report progress in these basins, but that isn't stopping us from taking action because, as you saw from Andrea and Naabia, and even from Bruce, the issues are real and we need to address them today. And so we're starting to do that holistically as a global sustainability organization within Procter & Gamble, but also through our brands. And I wanted to share an example here with you today of what our Cascade dishwashing brand is doing. They're really leveraging their voice and the innovation that they've developed over the years to reduce water use in the homes of their consumers, while also partnering with others to protect water and restore water in the company's priority basins. The brand started along its water stewardship journey with a superior product, the Cascade Platinum dishwashing detergent. This product will allow you to just put your dishes straight in the dishwasher without pre-washing and get them very clean. And they also had an insight that even though household penetration of dishwashers is high in the United States, the use of them is pretty low. It's less than 2 loads that are run per week in the dishwasher on average. So they dug a little bit deeper and they learned that this was primarily driven by the misconception that the dishwasher is more wasteful than hand washing dishes at the sink. And Cascade then made it their mission to bust this common myth about the dishwasher and to help consumers save water and energy while also growing their business. In early 2020, the brand created an advertisement to bust the myth that the dishwasher uses more water and energy than hand washing in a clever and memorable way. Let's watch.
I'm Sarah Michelle Gellar.
And I'm Freddie Prinze Jr. And we want to talk to you about something affecting millions of households, a topic we care passionately about.
Doing it every night.
We get it. Until recently, we were only doing it once, maybe twice a week. Now we do it every night.
Run the dishwasher with Cascade Platinum. Energy Star certified dishwashers use less than 4 gallons of water per cycle. Washing your dishes by hand uses about 4 gallons of water every 2 minutes.
Even a load with only 8 dishes is all it takes to save water with Cascade Platinum versus hand washing.
Now we do it after the kids are asleep.
We do it after pasta.
Like mac and cheese or lasagna night.
We do it after enchiladas.
We do it after takeout.
We do it after takeout.
Do it to save water, energy, and time.
Do it every night to clean burnt-on messes in just one wash with no pre-wash needed.
With Cascade Platinum, the #1 recommended brand in North America.
I can't wait to do it again.
Tomorrow night. I'm Sarah.
In parallel to the campaign, they supported 2 water restoration projects through the Change the Course initiative. These projects are in one of the company's priority basins in Northern California, and they're helping to progress our ambition to protect water for people and nature, along with 6 other on-the-ground projects that are being supported there by our corporate sustainability team. I really like that example. So it's taken us some time to get where we are today, and we definitely still have lots to learn and do on this journey, but it all started with the recognition that water is becoming an increasingly stressed resource. And if we want to thrive into the future as both a business and human beings, we need to act now. So I encourage you to look at where your company is where they're using water, where you're impacting water across the life cycle of your own products and services, and leverage tools like the World Resources Institute's Aqueduct's Water Risk Atlas or the WWF Water Risk Filter to learn more about where your company, customers and suppliers are exposed to water risk, and then think strategically about how to address those risks. At P&G, 96% of our water footprint is associated with people using our products. This gives us a unique opportunity to talk to our consumers in creative ways about how we can work together to have a positive impact. How's your business uniquely positioned to address these challenges? Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. It's pretty awesome, and I love that brand commercials. Maybe we'll get some questions about that. And while I'm on questions, there is a Q&A box. So if you're thinking about some things as we're going through these segments and questions that you'd like to ask, go ahead and pop them in now, and then we'll get to them after Jonathan gets his chance to talk about the Coca-Cola program. So Jonathan is the Water Resource Sustainability Director for Coca-Cola in North America. In this role, he leads the company's water stewardship program, which addresses water risks facing Coca-Cola's operations. This effort includes water conservation, source water protection, community water partnerships, and sustainable agriculture, initiatives. Jonathan helped position Coca-Cola as an industry leader in water stewardship and working toward the goal of returning as much water as is used in Coca-Cola's beverages and production worldwide. So Jonathan, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Bruce. And thanks to the World Trade Center Institute for inviting me here. I wanted to share a little bit about what Coca-Cola is doing in the water stewardship space and how we're addressing some of the challenges that you have been hearing about. It wasn't as smooth as I thought it would be, but here we go. So I'm going to assume that everybody is familiar with our company. We make beverages. And if you are familiar with it, then you will understand how important water is to our company. It's literally the #1 ingredient in everything that we make. It's necessary for our manufacturing processes. We use it in our plants to clean equipment, make sure that the quality is maintained in our products. It's also an important component of the agricultural ingredients that go into our products, whether it's sweeteners or juices or whatever. It takes water to produce those. And then just as important, or maybe more important, it's a life-sustaining resource for the communities where we operate. When you think about it, that's where our customers are, our consumers, even our employees, are within those communities where we operate. And you have to have clean, reliable water supplies in order to have an economically viable community and therefore an economically viable business. So we have a real vested interest to be good water stewards and to do what we can to improve water security where we operate. Now, when you look at this map, and we saw some other risk maps, we've been at this water stewardship business for quite a while, because when you take all those items of why water was so important to us, and you overlay that with what some people consider the global water crisis, and all this water stress that's occurring out there, and more water is being used than is available, then we really had to take action. So we've been at this for over a decade, establishing our water strategies and setting targets around water stewardship. Now, historically, those targets have focused on mainly inside our operations, like water efficiency. We have goals, to improve our efficiency. In fact, we started that back in 2005, I think, and set goals to improve it. And then we keep resetting those goals. So far, we've improved, by around 30%. And now going forward out to 2030, we're going to set new goals in that area. So that's an area that we have direct control over. Also, when you think about the water that doesn't go into our packages, goes down the drain and leaves the facility as wastewater, we have goals to make sure that water is suitable for aquatic habitat when it's discharged to the environment, meets all local standards. And in a lot of places, we will rely on municipal treatment systems to do that. So we make sure that the wastewater is treated. Now, we also have one of the legs of the stool around water risk, and we identify enterprise water risk, like what you see on the screen here, using tools like WRI's aqueduct mapping tool, for instance. And you can see all those blue dots on here where we have manufacturing operations. So we look at it from this broad level and see how much volume we have in various water stress situations. But then we also take it a little bit further than that. We have developed plans and source water protection plans in each of our plant locations. So we do what we call source vulnerability assessments and look at the local watersheds, identify those issues, and then set up plans to mitigate those. Now, one of our mitigation strategies that we developed over a decade ago is called our Replenish program. And that was a goal that we set to return to nature and communities the same amount of water that we use in our beverages. So for every drop we use, we give one back. And we actually achieved that goal at an enterprise level. It was a 2020 goal, and we achieved it 5 years early in 2015. But then we've continued to meet that goal since then. But 2020 has come and gone. So we've had to develop our new 2030 water strategy. And it's going to have it does have, we've already developed it. We're just rolling it out right now. Many of the same basic components as our old strategy, but with a few nuances. I'll just point out a couple here. One is we're introducing this new metric called regenerative water use. And the focus of this new strategy is to really prioritize our locations for manufacturing and agricultural ingredient sourcing, and focus on those areas that are the most stressed. So you've probably heard of these new terms about context-based water targets, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to achieve here, is really focus our resources where they matter most. And regenerative water use is a goal where we're going to have a net positive impact on water in those direct watersheds where we source our water locally. So we do that through our replenish program. And another aspect of this new strategy is to focus on our agricultural ingredients. Our old strategy served us well. It kind of positioned us as leaders in water stewardship. A lot of other companies had followed our lead since then. But then the question always comes up, your biggest water footprint is in your agricultural supply chain. What are you doing there? So we're adding that to the new strategy. We're going to be working with suppliers and other stakeholders to start building resilience and improving water security in those sourcing areas. And then the last difference is we're going to identify priority watersheds where we might have multiple leadership locations where we're doing regenerative water use, but also coupled with agricultural sourcing areas. And we're going to double down in those basins and develop basin plans to improve water sustainability, to improve watershed health, and really to focus on collective action and working with other industry members and stakeholders to really scale up the impact that we can have. So that's kind of on a page, our new water strategy going forward. I'm really excited about it. Now, just to kind of show you what it looks like in practice a little bit. This is in North America. We have been doing this replenish program for quite a while. You can see all the little green dots here are replenish projects that we're doing in watersheds. And I'm going to show you a few examples here in a minute. But we have 74 active projects right now in the US and Canada. And we are now focusing, as I mentioned, on those source watersheds where we have the highest stress. So we prioritize, manufacturing locations. You can see them as the red dots on this map. And we've delineated the watersheds where we source the water. And now we're overlaying our existing replenish projects. And this will also help us target our new replenish projects, specifically in those basins where we source water in these stressed areas. If you look at some of the numbers on the left, you can see just in North America, we're replenishing 34 billion liters of water per year right now, compared to 31 billion liters of our sales volume. And so you can see we are replenishing over 100% of that. On top of that, I mentioned those priority basins. So we've identified, this is the North America example, and we're doing this all over the world, 5 priority basins. You can see that they're in Florida kind of as a whole, because there's a lot of water that's shared within that area. The upper Midwest is where we source our corn for corn syrup. And there's a lot of water quality issues up there. Trinity River in Texas, the Rio Grande, and then California as a whole, we're going to treat as a priority basin. Now, focusing on California, the water there is very interconnected. They have lots of aqueducts and groundwater recharge basins, et cetera. So we're treating it as one large priority watershed. And, they've had drought issues historically, as everyone's probably aware. And we have been working in that state and doing replenish projects for quite a while now. And in fact, by the end of this year, we'll have 13 active replenish projects going on there. Not only do we have plants that we're considering leadership locations, but also it's a sourcing area for almonds and lemons for us. So that's where all these things come together to really make it an important area for us. Plus the fact that they're facing, staring down the barrel of another drought coming up this year. As you'll see on the left about our replenish volumes, we have replenished at the end of this year, it'll be over 5 billion liters per year. And compared to our whole sales volume, it's well over 100% of that. But what we really are going to focus on is collaborative solutions here. Even though we're doing all these replenish projects, they kind of, in the end, if you really look at it, they're like random acts of kindness. They do a little bit here and there. What we need to do is start collaborating more, scaling up the impact, getting multiple investors so we can really start making a difference in the watersheds. There's a couple examples on the bottom of this page. California Water Action Collaborative. There's one called Connect the Drops that deals with advocacy and influencing legislation. And then, as we heard about before, the Water Resilience Coalition, of which Nature Conservancy is a big part of, and we are also part of that. So I had told you I'd show you what some of these replenish projects look like. So if you look in the middle, these are all from California, since we're focusing there right now. That's a high mountain meadow up in the Sierra Nevada. So it's this meadow, and there's hundreds of these meadows up there, are supposed to act as a big sponge and store water and release it, cool, clean water throughout the year during dry periods. Well, what's happening when you have overuse or misuse of the land, then those streams begin to erode, and in size, the water table drops. It kind of just drains out and dries out that whole meadow. So we work with the U.S. Forest Service and then put in these soil plugs. It's called plug and pond, and you're able to slow down that water, back it up, pond it up. Water table rises, you plant native vegetation, the roots can now reach the water table, and we were able to restore the natural hydrology of that particular meadow. And that project, for instance, is delivering 300 million liters of replenish volume per year towards our goal. Some of the other projects, if you look in the lower left, there's infrastructure improvement, where in one of our municipalities where we operate, there's a big water main leak, which we helped identify and then helped pay to fix it. That's saving a lot of water. There's recharge basins, like in our almond supply chain, where when you have the winter flooding season, you can redirect some of that water into these recharge basins. Soaks into the ground, recharges the aquifer, and then you can pull that water out later during the dry period. Of course, we'd heard about the catastrophic wildfires that are occurring. And so there's lots of projects we can do around that, whether it's forest management and thinning to avoid these fires, or reforestation afterwards. And then we have invasive species, that you see on the lower right. This particular one is in the San Gabriel Mountains, part of the LA River watershed. And this is giant cane, invasive and super thirsty. It uses 5 times more water than the native vegetation. So we funded projects to go and eradicate that and replace it with native plants. And then in the upper right, you'll see a barrel. That's a rain barrel. That's where our ingredients come in these drums. And instead of throwing those drums away when we're done, we donate them to local watershed groups. They hold workshops to build your own rain barrel, and then we'll donate them to local community, take them home. So the last thing I want to point out here is on the left, the partners. Of course, we know how to make beverages. We don't necessarily know how to restore watersheds. So we rely heavily on our partners to understand what are the issues, what are the solutions, and then we help fund projects to mitigate the situation. Now, if I had to give a call for action to other companies, we heard a little bit about this from both TNC and P&G, but number one thing is understand the importance of water to your operations, and all throughout your value chain, not just in your manufacturing operations. Understand that risk. So where do you have the areas of risk and where you might get into trouble in the future, or might be negatively impacting the communities that you operate in? And then get engaged outside the 4 walls of your plant. Everybody kind of focuses on their efficiency and inside the 4 walls, but your water really comes from outside. And I just encourage everybody to start looking outside the 4 walls, learn where your water comes from up in the watersheds, and then actually get out there in the watershed. That's what I always tell companies I talk to. And even whenever I take our senior leadership out to some of our replenish projects, one of my bosses always said, we got to get out and kick the dirt. And it just opens your eyes up into what the issues are and what the solutions can be. And it really drives it home. So that would be my advice. And I believe I'm going to end it there. And I look forward to this discussion ahead.
Okay, John, that was awesome. And if the other panelists can join us, because actually I'm going to start with you, Andrea, kind of get back to the bigger picture, and then we'll take some of the questions that have come in that are more specific. But I guess the thing would be is, we see what Koch's doing, we see kind of where Procter & Gamble's coming, and of course TNC broadly. Can these kind of nature-based solutions really scale and solve the challenges, kind of for the pace that we need them? So, how do you think about that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And gosh, that was a fun round of presentations to see the work that's ongoing. Well, no, let's be honest that nature-based solutions alone will not solve our water security problems at scale. So we don't want to overstate the case here. But absent the fundamental system that supplies water, we also can't solve water security. And so you have to think about this as blending infrastructure, typical gray infrastructure, cement and pipes, to natural infrastructure, the system that comes, that brings all of that resource to us. And it's also true that sometimes it is the most cost-effective way to solve the problem. And so it's not just about, yes, we need it, but it is also a good problem solver. And some of us were chittering offline here a little bit about one of those cases is in Cape Town, where there's very, very severe water restriction problem, both in the past with droughts, but going forward. And our work there with the water fund that we've started in Cape Town with corporate partners and now with the city of Cape Town supporting us has found that we can put as much water back in the system through restoration of the watershed, about 2 months of water supply. That translates to 50 billion liters annual in about 5 years. So that's a considerable amount of water that comes from the watershed, but it's at 1/10 of the cost of a desal plant. Should they do a desal plant? Maybe, because they might need that too. But let's do the good things first that have a better cost-effectiveness or cost-benefit ratio and have all these other great benefits like biodiversity gains, employment gains, and other things that are available. So put it together is our
you need all the pieces if we're going to solve this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So John, one of the things that came in, you talked about this replenishment goal and kind of, water in, water out of the system. What are the metrics that you use to say, am I really making a difference in, those communities and in those specific watersheds, like beyond just, kind of how many liters you're consuming and replenishing?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't have the full answer to it, but there's a lot of people and great companies and organizations working on that. So what we do is we look at our footprint and we make sure that we are, basically, I guess you'd call it offsetting our footprint within those watersheds. But what we really need to do is establish the science-based target for a watershed. What are the problems? How much water, is being overused, and start establishing metrics around that. And then collectively between, ourselves, if we're in that basin, other water users in that basin, and then just as important, the local governments or state governments, start leveraging their monies to do these projects to meet those larger targets. Now, in an ideal situation, you might say, okay, we're trying to restore flow, in a stream that has enough water for a municipality and for the ecosystem. And you say, okay, we need to leave this much in, and you can measure that flow and watch it increase over time. But it takes a long time to get there. So it's, it may be not attainable right away to know what that metric would look like. All you can do is kind of set a meaningful science-based target and start working towards it.
Makes sense. Okay. So Shannon, a couple for you. I'm going to start with the fun one. The 50-liter goal has caught someone's attention. It's like, wow, how do I visualize that? Is that 50 liters like for a family, for an individual? Just seems like that's a very small amount of water. So why don't you give your perspective on that?
Sure. So it's really 50 liters per person per day.
Okay.
And really trying to get the whole ecosystem of a home to provide, to only require that amount of water to do all of the things you're already doing in your home. You may be doing it in a slightly different way, but in a way that delights you, and the experience is even better than before. So it's really a bold vision. Probably not, I mean, not going to happen next year. That would be great. But it's really something, a vision to work towards. And so P&G, it really started within our company. A visionary within our company developed the idea, and we started working on it through our different brands and having learning more about what are people using to brush their teeth, what are people using to take a shower, and what are the technologies that exist today that can help them reduce that, and what are those technologies that might need to work in the future to do to complete that vision. And so now there's a coalition that's formed with several different companies who have this shared vision called the 50 Liter Home Coalition. So you can learn a little bit more about their vision at 50lhome.org.
Okay. So that's interesting. So one of the problem is it's not in front of our face. If we're, dieting, we have a scale in the bathroom, we step on it, we see how much we weigh, right? I mean, it seems like home should have like a liter consumption gauge that says, oh, we used 173 liters of water today, right? And at least there'd be that feedback loop that says, what are we doing? And if we make changes, how much are we saving? So it seems to me like we need that. But one of the other questions is that on a bigger scale, and that's about the cost of water, right? Mm-hmm. So when Procter & Gamble is looking at these programs, or any companies looking at the programs, how do we think about, kind of that there's low or no cost for water? How do we look at like ROI or the cost benefit of these kinds of programs? So I'll open that to you and to John. And how do you think about that? How do you kind of create the value for the program?
Yeah, I think what you first have to do is build the foundation of knowledge and not give the company really an option. So we really started with doing the risk assessment, showing the essential nature. We need water at these parts of within our value chain, and this is where we're exposed to risk if water were to be scarce, and showing also through examples of other companies or other products or other examples of people who have been impacted and what that translates to in a dollar amount, or even some qualitative metrics or other economic metrics for people who have lost time going to work or other things like that. Sure. So I think building that foundation of knowledge using the data and using also the publicly available data to build the case has been essential for justifying the programs that come then from the company related to water. And then if we think specifically about within the four walls of a facility, that has been more challenging because companies are set up maybe to have a certain return on investment of a capital investment or something like that within the four walls of the plant. And so while P&G is committed, because we know how important water is to our operations and to our products, that challenge can still come up. And so there are new tools like we're piloting right now, the water risk monetizer tool, which looks at the whole value of water. What is the true cost of water, and how can you assess a potential investment within the four walls of a facility using different metrics? So
yeah, and so it's actually that true cost of water, I think, is something that I'd like to hear, like John's perspective and others. What if there was more of an economic model where water was actually priced in its true cost, right? Are you proponents of economic motivation and driving that where there's real dollars assigned to water? I mean, just think about California and the withdrawals in California. If there was a real cost of that water, how that may affect behavior and consumption, both by business and consumers. So, John, what do you think?
Yeah, well, you're starting to tread on a kind of a sensitive topic.
Especially when you're a big consumer.
But there are examples of what you're talking about, like when you have a really water scarce area, like down in the Darling Basin in Australia. Or even in California now, there's a water market that's developing and even being traded, you know, on Wall Street. I think it's too early to tell what impact it's going to have. But if you stand back and look at it, I think there's some good aspects to that, because it does set a true cost or value of that water, and it directs it towards the most beneficial cost, you know, effective use typically. So if typically water was being used because, you know, somebody had access to it and they've always had it and they just use it to produce, you know, something that's not that valuable. And they say, oh, wait, I have all this water, I can sell it for more, make more money, you know, instead of producing what I was producing. Now it goes towards something that there's a higher value for, and it will direct that. So anyway, the jury's still open on whether that's something that we would really get behind or not. And it probably
okay. Well, so you're a water consumer, Andrea and Naabia. What about from TNC's perspective? Where are you in kind of driving real economics around water? Is that in your purview?
Yeah, and we've certainly, you know, we share some of John's maybe thoughtfulness around whether it's a good or a bad thing to price water, but in general, in the water sector in the world, we know that the lack of value for water drives much of the inefficiency, and then therefore the lack of savings. So that problem does need to be addressed. We've worked on some of these projects to try to think of, can you set up local markets for water so that there's a incentive to save, and maybe then also value for the person who has that right to water. If they do save, then can they use it for another use, including to environmental use? The important thing here is safeguards. So, you know, it's not privatizing water so that it's not available to those who need it as a human use. And so safeguards for people that need it for human use first, and not at a market price, you know, but at a public good price. And that might be free in some places on the planet. There are problems with not paying for water, which means then you end up with really bad water supply companies because nobody invests in them. So you can't really, you know, go to free without knowing that there's a problem with that too. But there's also safeguards for the environment. And in many places, we don't have the regulatory environment that says there's a right reserved to the environment. And so we can also see that as being a disincentive for, you know, conserving natural ecosystems if all of that water is taken out. So it's a problem to be solved, and there's some really interesting local examples. Treading through those waters and trying to figure out how do you create the right examples that show us what would the right policy sort of constraints be to protect against, you know, misuse of that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add quickly to that.
Sure.
The UN has recognized water as one of those universal basic human rights. So that's, you know, Andrew was talking a lot about, you know, having that right for human need, but, you know, does that mean there needs to be a cost associated with water? And there are lots of, I think, philosophical debates you could have about that question. And it's really an interesting area of the discussion.
Well, we're seeing that now with the vaccines, right? It's like, you know, the rich countries get them and the poor countries don't. And they talk about making it free, but if it doesn't exist, free doesn't help, right? So, you know, it's, you know, that same push and pull all the time. Well, Naabia, while I'm happy, go ahead.
I just want to add one quick point about the evolution in our thinking and other companies' thinking, at least the ones that are forward thinking. You know, it used to be where when a municipality wanted to increase water rates, you would always fight against it. No. But now we understand how truly, you know, undervalued and underpriced water is, that we will actually advocate for that, you know, as long as it's spread out the cost to everybody. But we understand it takes money to keep infrastructure up and keep watersheds protected. So it's just a change in thinking that I'm happy to see it's happening.
Awesome. Naabia, one of the things that came up about, you know, kind of working in the private sector and these, you know, kind of collaborations, and talking about this water risk assessing, is this issue gaining traction with corporate CEOs in the boardroom? You know, are more companies taking on these risk models and really doing this work?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that increase is the short answer. If you look at some of the disclosure platforms like CDP, which is formerly the Carbon Disclosure Project, they also have a water questionnaire that they put out to companies, which is requested by their investor partners. And you're seeing the number of companies that are responding to those questionnaires increase significantly in recent years. The CEO water mandate that we mentioned is a platform. They now have 180 companies or 190 companies who are members as of this year. And that means that the CEO of the company has signed on to 6 commitments that the company is making in terms of disclosing their water use, partnering with others, et cetera. So it's definitely a place where we're seeing companies move in terms of engaging more, and also taking it all the way up to the level of their CEO as an issue that they want to put their foot forward on.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's like always, we could spend an hour just on these topics over and over, but it's great to have everyone. There were some questions in here about, kind of waste of that's created, for example, plastic bottles and those kinds of things. And also other technology like robotics and drones and things to help, with water restoration. So lots of interesting questions. Wish we had more time, but I do want to thank all of you for your, just amazing work that you're doing. It's incredibly important, and it's wonderful to see it in action and producing real results. So thank you with that. And Jen, I'll turn back to you and we will wrap it up.
Thanks, Bruce, and thank you to all of the speakers. The presentations were so interesting. It was so great to hear from all of you, and thank you, Bruce, for moderating all of the sessions for this series. And thank you for those of you who joined for the sessions and for this session. We hope you learned a lot and are inspired to implement change in your own business and life. And you will be able to find all of the recordings for the water sessions on the website at wtci.org/agile. And plan to resume the Agile series again in October, hopefully, but of course, safely, and starting with the topic of employee upskilling, and then followed by rethinking data security in November, and the changing landscape of consumer behavior in December. So if you would like to speak or suggest a speaker, please reach out to me at jennifer_s@wtci.org, and check on the website for more information regarding these sessions and updates. So now I'd like to make an important announcement for the Maryland Department of Commerce, the Netherlands Water Partnership, and Baltimore Rotterdam Sister Cities, who've played an integral part in this program. The state of Maryland has a memorandum of understanding with the province of South Holland in the Netherlands, the province where the cities of Rotterdam and The Hague are located. The collaboration is focused on cybersecurity and life sciences and health, and it is expanded to include water management, green tech, and agri-tech. South Holland serves as a gateway for Maryland companies to Europe, and Maryland serves as a gateway for Dutch companies to the US. Companies can partner to cooperatively address many issues that are of concern to both regions. Companies can benefit from soft landing programs to help them expand to each region. The Netherlands Water Partnership is an organization based in The Hague for Dutch water management companies and research institutes. And earlier this year, Maryland and the Netherlands Water Partnership, together with other organizations like Baltimore Rotterdam Sister Cities, held a joint conference on climate resilience, which addressed issues with rising seas and flooding. Participants included representatives from both the public and private sector. This conference initiated an increased level of activity between the two regions to work together in areas regarding water resources and find nature-based solutions for flood management. So if you are a Maryland company that would like to expand to Europe via the Netherlands, or if you are a Dutch company who is interested in expanding to the USA via Maryland, contact Andrew Kreinick at the Maryland Department of Commerce. So that concludes our session. We thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again, hopefully in person in the fall.